Aviv Beckstead Muskie.
Here.
Tish Campbell.
Here.
Nancy Clayberg.
Here.
Pip Clues. Brian French.
Here.
Lee Hudson.
I think he's here, isn't he?
Thought he was going to be on Zoom.
Lee, are you here? Maybe he'll come on.
Byron Maddow.
Here.
Carrie Nolte. Lisa Rappaport. Eric Moore. Nathan Delaney.
Here.
Okay. Is the Zoom hooked up for Lisa and Lee? Do you know? Okay, good. All right, maybe they'll join us. Okay, can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the next item is announcements and recognitions. Zach, would you like to?
Yeah, I think just quickly that we are now a little over a week away from next Wednesday. We'll have new teachers in for new teacher orientation. The day after that, we have our opening day and convocation for the school district. Then Friday and Monday are of that going into that weekend. We have teacher workshop days, and then students come in on the 26th. We have 3 days we have phase, as you'll know, we phase in students depending on the grade levels, but we phase in students over those couple of days. And then that Friday before Labor Day weekend, everybody's off. So we come in, we get about 3 days of getting back into the swing of things. And then everybody gets a 4-day break to recover and realize that reality is set back in, and then we're back at it. So we're right at the precipice of getting everyone back in and ready to go, and we're pretty excited about it. So.
Gosh, it seems like summer vacation just started, and here we are talking about going back to school.
It goes fast.
Nathan, are you going to be a senior this year?
Yes, I am.
Oh, good
We have
luck.
one more year with you,
Yeah.
unless you
Then
stay
you can
back.
then you can get rid of me, but until then.
Just to interrupt.
Yes.
Lisa said she is on Zoom. There's audio issues.
Thank you, Tish. Can our producer help us?
Oh, we got a thumbs up from producer
It's
Lamb.
all set, yeah.
How are we doing now?
She had said that she had issues, not still having.
Lisa, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry. I was
Okay.
having trouble with my computer audio, but it's good now.
Oh, great.
Okay, well, welcome. Okay, the next item is public comment. And I noticed that Rick Bean and his son Jordan are in the audience. And they are here to talk about the Connie Bean request that we have on our agenda a little further down. But Rick has a commitment that he has to make in about a half an hour. So he asked if he could speak at this public comment part of the section, part of the agenda. So, Rick, if you'd like to come forward.
Thank you. Before I start my 3 minutes, which I'm sure Nancy will hold me to as much as possible, I would like to say that we have already been in front of the the Recreation Director who's approved this. He then sent us to the Arts Council because he thought it was art. We got to the arts people. They said, we're okay with this, but it's not outdoor art, so it's not our committee. They sent us to the school board. They sent us to the city council. City council loved the idea, but they said because it's taking place in a school, we need to go in front of the school board. So that's what led me to your podium here this evening. So let me do this. Let me say my name is Rick Bean. I'm a lifelong resident of Portsmouth, as is my family, and as is my mother, Connie Bean. Nancy asked me if I would come in and speak with you guys because she thinks many of you may not know who is Connie Bean. So she's given me 3 whole minutes to talk about Connie Bean. I need to assume something in order to do this. I'm going to assume that many of you were not here during the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s and know what it was like here in Portsmouth, because it was a totally different community It was a working community, very blue collar. A lot of families had 3, 4, 5 children. And there was less supervision of the children then. The children roamed a lot more than they used to, or that they do now. And part two is downtown Portsmouth was totally different than what it is today. It used to be downtown Portsmouth was all the retail in Portsmouth. It used to be downtown was neighborhoods of people. It used to be all the schools were near downtown. Maybe some of you remember the high school used to be downtown. The junior high school is still downtown. Haven School, Farragut School, St. Patrick's School, all downtown. You could even say that Lafayette School was within walking distance. So downtown Portsmouth was the gathering spot of the people of the city of Portsmouth. And Portsmouth Community Center, as it was called then, was the gathering spot for a lot of activity. If you go back and look at some of the newspaper clippings from that time, it will tell you that 35,000 people a year, 35 organizations, as well as the fireman's ball, the policeman's ball, student dancers, high school dancers, middle school dancers, everything took place at the Portsmouth Community Center. And when you put those two things together, this is where it starts to intersect with Connie Bean. Teens would hang out at the Portsmouth Community Center. That was where they went after school. That was where they went with their friends. That's where they went for all their activities. And because of the times, the parents would put their trust in Connie Bean because she was the one person at the community center who was there all the time. She became a second mother to many of them. She provided oversight. She provided money. She provided food. She provided guidance. She provided transportation. And that's a really nice thing for me to say. And I could have made it up, but I didn't, because these are the stories that I've heard from people in our community that actually experienced the Connie Bean experience. I hate to say it, but I was of that age too. So I was there during that period. So I saw it with my own eyes, how my mother intersected with all these people. Back in 1984, when they actually approved the name change of the Portsmouth Recreation Center to the Connie Bean Center, many members of the council in 1984 actually experienced that themselves. They were part of the community back then. Eileen Foley, who was the mayor at the time, told me in a personal conversation that her children experienced the same thing, sending her children to the community center, knowing that Connie Bean was there and would watch over them. So the one thing that I've left out of this conversation, I've talked about her humanitarian efforts. For 35 years, starting in 1948, she was the assistant recreation director of the city of Portsmouth, and she did her duties and responsibilities on top of all these other things. And the one thing that we as a family are concerned about is that when the community center moved from Daniel Street to its current location at the middle school, a lot of the activity, a lot of the information about Connie Bean was left behind. It was never really transferred to the new place. So what we are proposing to do is to make a wall, a remembering wall of who was Connie Bean, what was she like, what did she do for the community, because we want the community to know the legacy of Connie Bean, and with your support, we'll be able to keep it alive. Questions? No questions. Wow.
We got the proposal in our packet.
Oh,
so
okay. All right.
We've seen the proposal.
All right, so I was not sure of that.
So thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Rick, for coming.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, take care.
Thanks, Rick.
Okay, I realized I skipped an item on our agenda, the consent agenda. So do we have a motion to accept all the minutes? June 24th, 2025, public minutes, July 10th, 2025, non-public minutes, and July 10th, 2025, public minutes.
Maybe we should close the public comment first,
Oh, okay. I will close.
unless other people want to.
Thank you, thank you. Oh, yes. Do we have anybody else that would like to speak at public comment? How about on Zoom? Do we have anybody on Zoom? Thank you. Thank you, Brian, for keeping me in line. Okay, so let's move on to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve all those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on any of the minutes? Any changes, additions, deletions? Okay. All those in favor?
Roll call.
Oh, we have to do roll call.
Yes. Genevieve Beckstead Muskie.
Rusty.
Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Nancy Kleberg.
Yes.
Brian French.
Yes.
Byron Matto.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Passed.
That's everybody? Lee dropped off. Did Lee drop
Yeah,
off?
it did not join, so I don't see him. So.
Okay, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the New Hampshire School Boards Association School Board Goal Settings Best Practices. Would you like to introduce our guest?
Well, we know, I think you all know Barrett well. I will say, Barrett let me know that he didn't know he was going to be on TV. But he's got a podium, so that helps the cause. You know Barrett from his role as the director of the New Hampshire School Boards Association. Had come in previously to have some dialogue with us as well. He's here tonight, I think, not to have a long conversation, prolonged conversation, despite what it looks like on the agenda. Just to touch base around, we know the board wanted to make sure it was ready to do annual goals connected to the board and to the superintendent. And Barrett was just had sent us the materials that were possible to do a full workshop. Some of that material, some of that stuff we've already done through our own strategic planning work. So I think, he's here to just give you some quick tips, answer any questions that you have, and then be available for follow-up as needed. So, and we really appreciate, every time Barrett comes out, I always appreciate, Barrett's contributions. So.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Superintendent McLaughlin. Thank you much, Madam Chair. Good evening again, members of the Portsmouth School Board. Nice to see everybody again. Zach, thanks for sort of giving me a little cover. I thought we were doing like a training session tonight, and it was like 95 degrees in Concord today. So, and it's still summer, so I appreciate you excusing my informalities tonight. I greatly appreciate it. So I did send some materials a couple weeks ago, just really nothing overly major. There was more bullet points and things to think about. And I had on file a handful of board goals that I sent to you as well too from some New Hampshire school districts that I think were somewhat recent, within the last maybe 3 or 4 years. I've got a handful of tips here or recommendations that NHSBA tends to recommend, I guess, if you will, relative to what school boards should be considering when they are engaging in school board goal setting. And to be clear, school board goal setting is separate and distinct than superintendent goal setting, or goals that the board may establish for the superintendent. And it's also separate and distinct than what the board may establish as school district goals. My understanding is that the board underwent strategic planning a year or two ago, if I'm not mistaken, and you're still sort of working through that, and that's still a living document, if you will, and you probably had, benchmarked, a year in, 3 years in, 5 years in throughout that strategic plan. So you've got the framework done, if you will, for school board goal setting. But two quick points that I really want to make that I think are very important to clarify for the board and the community, I guess, as well too, since I'm on television. When NHSBA is doing sort of goal setting training for school boards, we always say start with the strategic plan. You've got that. But hopefully there may be, and I think we may have had this conversation, there may be sort of tasks in there for the board to keep tabs of, or to keep track of, or to benchmark, or to work towards. But more so than what might be in the strategic plan, I was out recently, whenever that was, a couple months ago, to do the school board roles and responsibilities training. And I know I've done that for the Portsmouth School Board a number of times over the last few years, if you will. So we always recommend at NHSBA that the school board goal setting, the goals should be tied back to what the traditional school board roles and responsibilities are. And to run through those again, sort of briefly, we talk about policy work for school boards. Is your policy manual up to date? I'm not asking that for an answer. I'm asking that as a hypothetical. We know in some districts, if you've got lots of superintendent turnover, you've got lots of school board turnover over the course of 2, 3, 4 elections, policy work is easy to fall off the table and to not necessarily become a priority. So one thing we always tell school boards: how up to date is your policy manual? If it hasn't been looked at in a number of years, that's a fantastic goal to work on over 12 months or 2 years to get your policy manual back up to date. The second primary school board roles and responsibilities, you notice I wrap all of our trainings together, like none of these stand alone. I think you noticed that, but I'd be remiss if I just didn't say it out loud, and there's a reason for that. Budget, we talk about the school board budget responsibilities, and I know you have a little bit of a different system here in Portsmouth, like many of the cities do. You're a dependent school district, and the city council approves your budget, collective bargaining agreements. School board presumably has day-to-day operations and line item authority. But when we talk about budget, we're not just necessarily talking about the school board operating budget that is ultimately approved by the city council. There are other aspects that the board may need to consider, such as facilities. Do you need to take out a bond for a renovation or a new facility? Is there reallocation of funds that either the board has determined would be better used here in this bucket rather than over there in that bucket? Has your collective bargaining agreement been passed? Are there issues with your collective bargaining agreement in terms of benefits, in terms of salary, in terms of pay, in terms of steps, in terms of tracks, whatever the case may be? Anything that has a budget impact, that is the responsibility of the school board. I'm going to put it in that bucket category for the school board to consider. So, again, you're a different system here, but in the traditional town meetings form of government that is prevalent throughout New Hampshire, that bond for that middle school may have failed 3 times in the last 5 years. So the board has to go on either a PR campaign or relook at the numbers. Can we cut the cost on it? Do we need, are there ways to amend, what the plan is or what the bond might be? That's what we talk about with sort of the facilities, if you will. Community engagement. I know we've talked about this quite a bit when we did the training under the school board roles and responsibilities. What is the board doing to actively engage the community as a whole? Parents, students, city council, taxpayers, people that may not even have a connection to the school district other than paying their property tax bill. Is it website? Is it an app? Is it easy access? Is it, text message services? Are there email lists that people can get on? So instead of having to request a copy of the minutes, it's emailed to them, on a master list. I know a handful of school districts do that. You're fortunate to be able to stream your videos. I presume these are recorded as well too and can go up on the website. But and when we talk about community engagement, it's wonderful if you can be at the basketball game or the football game. But finding ways to communicate with your constituents outside of, sort of those other larger events where they can maybe just sit and chat with you for a while about, coffee with the chair, what's going on with the budget, what's going on with the programming, what's going on, with this issue, what's going on with the cell phone policy, for example, that I'm sure is going to be taking up a lot of the board's time if it hasn't already. But community engagement. Superintendent evaluation process. I know that we had this as a pretty substantial part of our conversation as well too recently. Is your process working? Does it need to be revamped? How much effort does it needs to go into for it to be revamped? Is that a goal? Is it a minor tweak? Are you changing the whole system, the whole parameters of what the system that you and your superintendent are agreeing on? So some boards use that as well too. Strategic planning we talked about. And did I mention effective meetings by chance? I don't think I think I mentioned effective meetings. We have school boards that will call us and say, our meetings are running, 4.5 hours. I say, how big is your school? They say, you were a K-8 district with 300 kids. I said, you should not be having 5-hour school board meetings. And then, we give them, and why would that necessarily be a board goal? Because if we're talking about rules of order and putting, I don't want to say civility or decorum because you can run long and still be civil and have decorum. But, working with the board chair about some rules of order and parliamentary procedure. I see you do a consent agenda. That helps save some time, taking motions when you can do, approve a batch of things in a single vote. So we work with school boards on doing, engaging in effective meetings as well too. But again, that takes the board board sort of collectively saying, this is how we're going to operate. And, maybe the effect of meetings leads to the board creating some of its own bylaws and rules of operation and its own internal rules of order. So those are just some of the examples that NHSBA recommends school boards work towards when they're engaged in strategic planning. These are things that school boards, or NHSBA helps boards with in sort of their day-to-day operations, if you will. Again, they all relate to school board primary roles and responsibilities. As I mentioned this a little bit, tie your board goal setting into your strategic plan. The strategic plan is going to be your framework. Things will emanate from there. The other aspect too that I want to be mindful of, not every goal has to be an annual goal, and not every goal can or necessarily should be achieved in a 12-month time period. You've got a strategic plan you've got benchmarked for a year out, 3 years out, 5 years out. It may take your policy manual, for example. That may, depending on the board and what shape it's in, that may be a 2-year project based on where it is and the status of where your policy manual is. Effective meetings may be a long range goal, because that's going to take some retraining of getting used to how we used to operate in the past. And last, I guess the last bit of information, or the last recommendation that NHSBA will share, is that make sure that the board goals are the board's responsibility, and they do not become a to-do list or a task list for your administrators who are busy enough. I've seen that the board has, tried to engage in board goal setting, and innocently enough and with the best of intentions, the outcome is more stuff for the superintendent or the BA or the special ed director or the facilities director to try and do. And we're trying to minimize that and putting additional workload on our school district staff. But again, keep focusing on what the school board roles and responsibilities are, and then try to identify some tangible goals that can come from that. So that's my, I guess, 3-5 minute spiel. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Do we have questions, comments? No?
Well, as always, if we want to extend the conversation further, Zach and Patty, know where to find me, and Nancy, you do as well too. You call the office from time to time, and I'm your neighbor, just a town over, so I'm happy to come by anytime and help out the board as needed. If there's nothing else, thank you again for inviting NHSBA. Thank you for your continued membership. As always, we're here to help. Let us know what we can do to be of service.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barry.
Thank you, Barrett.
Thank you very much. Okay. Now, what we had decided was next Tuesday, we will have a meeting at 6:30 to set our school board goals and our superintendent goals, correct? Okay, so that's 6:30 next Tuesday. Okay, and I did get a response that, we could make.
We have a quorum, and
Yes.
we're good. Great.
I don't know where it is, though, do you?
I'll check
We'll
with
find out.
I think it's in the,
We'll send out.
probably school board conference room.
Yeah,
I guess.
I
We'll
think
send
so.
out an agenda anyway, so we'll let people know where it's going to be. Okay? So everyone, we also have a form that is available on, you made available to all
Yeah,
of us.
it's emailed out to everybody.
Okay.
I'll resend it again.
Okay, so Brian will resend the form, so if you want to put suggested goals in that form, that would be great, a great place to start. If everybody's puts some suggestions in there. That's good. Okay. Okay, well, thank you to Barrett for coming by. We will now go to, okay, he gave us some sample board goals, which are in the packet, so everybody take a look at those. Did you want to talk about superintendent goals, or do you want to
No,
wait till
I think we
next week?
can have that conversation next week. Look forward
Okay.
to the dialogue.
Okay. We are up to the superintendent report.
So, a couple of items of information in there. Just a reminder that we've got the new teacher reception on September 9th. Paulette included the invite, so it's 6:30. We'll be out in the lobby area with some refreshments to get a chance to meet some new staff and welcome new staff, and then we'll bring those, I think we'll end up bringing those folks in and have just an intro.
Yep, just an intro.
Quick
Yep.
intro to who they are and what they'll be doing for the school district. I think always a important thing for the board to have an opportunity to see some of those folks who are going to be working for you.
Okay,
And
just have a question
yeah.
on that. Is all staff invited to that?
So it has tradition. It's a great question. So traditionally, because of the cycle on which we hire, so if you mean like is it exclusively teaching staff? or-
No, is it exclusively just new hires, but is like an invite sent out to like the whole faculty saying, hey, here's an opportunity to come and welcome your new.
Hasn't been done in the past, but no reason why we couldn't put that out in one of the memos for. Each Monday we communicate with staff about various things, and I'd be happy to put that in there and say this is an opportunity to do that and see if we get any folks.
Thank you, Tish.
Overnight field trip memo. These are your Gold Star kids in terms of organization. These are folks who are in some cases putting in their requests a year out. But you have multiple trips, New Hampshire, Paris, Puerto Rico, Oregon, and we're just thankful for those folks that we're getting them early, gives us plenty of time to plan, but nothing unusual in that set. School board emails, just in terms of, you had two different sets of things that people were doing, had some reach out on. One was around Dundero class size and what was going to happen, particularly in the kindergarten. As of this afternoon, in conversations with Principal Callahan, we're up to 67 registered kindergartners at Dundero. Now, what's important for parents to know, and I think most people in the parent community understand at this point, we had 3 kindergarten classrooms last year. We've shifted around staff, so we'll have 4 this year. So right now, those kindergarten classrooms would be, there are three classrooms of 17 and 1 classroom of 16 at the moment, which is right around where we want to be. However, I will say that we did get from the period of time where we were looking to have official registration with folks in the spring through now, I feel like Principal Callahan gave me a number in the 20s. I mean, 20 additional kids who are, let's see, 25. So since April 28th, when we closed out at the tail end of April break, we've had an additional 25 kindergartners register. And some of that is, I think there's 2 different things for us to look at. We'll need to figure out when we think about that is how many of those folks have been in the community, and we have to think about outreach and incentivizing early registration so that we can do planning and shifting folks around, and how much of that is due to folks who are new to our community. Maybe folks who came into new apartments or something along those lines in the in-between. So we'll have to do some analysis on that because we were able to move things around for this upcoming year. But still, there was a push. That's more than if we're thinking we're trying to target about 17 kids, that's more than a classroom worth of kindergartners who came on board after the time we were asking folks to register. So we are in okay shape this year, but we need to continue to analyze and continue to look at those trends. YMCA, just the other thing was we had a couple emails this time around, and prior we've had some emails coming out of MC3, the change in MC3 funding at New Franklin School, and the concern about childcare options, number 1, and then number 2, affordable childcare options for folks. And there's been definitely some dialogue. I know there's been some dialogue with a variety of different partners, including the city, talking about what can we do to expand the capacity of the kind of ecosystem as a whole. And so, I think we've talked about this before. Rec picked up a certain number of kids out of MC3. The PEAK program will be operating out of New Franklin as well. They picked up a certain number of those kids. And I did have a conversation today that was not specifically for the purpose of this conversation, this point, but I did have a conversation today with the YMCA, a follow-up conversation with them, and they continue to explore what are there options for them around transportation that would allow them to transport more kids to either the location out on Beverly Hill or to Gundalo. But they're still exploring those options. Right now, they have a minibus they use to transport kids out of Little Harbor, and that's what they've been doing up to this point. They're looking at, do they have the ability to expand to some larger form of transportation to get students out to Gundalo potentially. So, still working on that.
Byron?
On the YMCA programs, the one on Beverly and Gundalo, is there capacity at those locations, and it's just a transportation problem?
So and I want to make sure I've got the elements of dialogue I had today. I think that their full capacity, and I think this was a Gundalo reference, was 60-ish kids at Gundalo. But it wasn't clear how much of that capacity in the conversation we were having. It wasn't clear to me. I think they were saying their maximum number of students in any given situation would be 60 that they could handle.
Right.
And it wasn't clear to me in that dialogue, though, how many spots they had spoken for already.
Right.
So, but there was additional capacity if they had the ability to transport out to. Now, part of there's a long tail on the story of how during COVID the district did some transportation using ESSER funds to get students out to Gundalo as a part of a bunch of different options that we offered to people during COVID. Post-COVID, we've pulled back on several of those things, partially due to finances and partially due to concerns from our insurance pool about the transportation across and out into Greenland. So, and that was a multi-year conversation to pull those things back in and phase it back in. But so we'll see. There's no guarantee. I'm just saying the Y continues to explore and has an interest. I also let them know, I'm like, you're really at a key moment too. If you're interested in expanding kind of your footprint, this is actually a really important moment to potentially take advantage of too. So.
Any other questions? Okay.
All right, then you have a memo from Patty and I around strategic planning updates and where we are as we come into the upcoming school year. That includes two different things. One is a cover memo that's a summary of where we are in focus area 1, 2, and 3, and then also in addition to that, the as we refer to as data dashboards, but kind of what are the adjusted data dashboards for 25-26 in each of those areas. So I think generally we remain on track on each of these things. I think we later in the evening will accept the resignation of Shay St. Laurent, who had been at the high school, and then we expanded her position during the budget season to be across middle school and high school to help create additional curriculum alignment and to do a lot of work that was in focus area 1. There's going to be a load. An increased amount of time Patty's going to have to put in to some of the things that would have fallen to Shay, and that will mean that the rest of us have to pick up some of the other pieces of Patty's load as we move through the upcoming year. So.
Yeah, just a quick question on that, because so the letter mentions like the 2-week period from the July 19th date.
Yep.
Do you have anything to report back on what came out of those discussions of what the high school is going to look like with curriculum and instruction if someone goes into
So we're not going to fill. So we weren't confident that we could fill. This bleeds into that registration conversation, but it's pertinent right now. We weren't confident that we were going to be able to fill the role with a candidate that could do all the things we would need the person to do at the tail end of July, and so we're not filling the position in this cycle. We're maintaining the role because it's still part of our strategic plan and we need it to do some of the stuff, but then we'll go through, as we go through the hiring process in the next cycle, we'll look to have a strong candidate come in and do that work. So,
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions from anyone about the strategic plan? Okay. Well, thank you. When will we get another report? Is it quarterly that we get
Quarterly,
reports?
so we'd look to come back to you in a couple of months with an update on where we lie as of then.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, thank you. Okay, next is the letter of resignation. You already mentioned
I think
that.
I kind of hit it. Ms. St. Laurent is moving on to a position, co-principal position at Revere High School. And they're in the midst of a major curricular change at their high school, and she's going to have a team of 20 staff members that she's overseeing. And as they work through their curriculum work, it's a vertical move for her. We try not to get in the way of vertical moves for our folks, and so we wish her the best. She definitely was a strong member of our team, and I think was well regarded in the district. And we appreciate the time she spent with us. We wish her the best in the next job.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, and good luck to her. We'll go to old business now, and we have a discussion about the IT ordinance that is being proposed by the city council. We all attended a meeting where we discussed this, and I think I'll turn it over to Brian and Byron to talk about this.
Yeah, I think there was, there's an ordinance. I don't actually have it in front of me, but we talked a lot about the ordinance and what it might mean for the school board. And I think there's some concerns around, what line item authority that would give with the ordinance. I think we all kind of agreed the spirit of it made a lot of sense. Cybersecurity is an important topic, and it will be increasingly more important. But I think some of us thought maybe it was more of an MOU would be sufficient. It didn't necessarily need to be an ordinance. And I don't think there's any ill will here. I think it's just people just trying to tackle the cybersecurity issues that we're facing. But I think we more worried about the way the language was written, in that where, what if we wanted, we're in a tight budget season and we need Chromebooks or something along those lines, and having them take the ability away from us to do that, as opposed to their current authority, which is give us, set the budget, and then we can do with the budget what we want to do. So I think there's some concerns around there, and I don't think it's concerns specifically with the council themselves. I just think about future councils and future budget sessions where things are tight, and those discussions would come up. So.
Byron, can you talk about your suggestion?
Yeah, so I think that doing a little bit of research, looking into a couple of the documents that specify the authority of the school board within the state statute or within RSA 189, and then in the city charter in section 6.3, and that's generally in those documents where the language is that gives the school board the authority to have line item, but also to set the direction of the school department within the city. And so I had drafted some language that I hoped would be added to the ordinance put forth by the governance committee to the city council. The language is as follows, which is, nothing herein shall be construed to infringe upon the authority of the Portsmouth School Board under RSA 189 or section 6.3 of the city charter, including but not limited to its authority over line item appropriations, contracting, staffing, and the administration of the operation of the public schools. And I hope that's not overly controversial for the new ordinance language. And I think it gives a nod to the authority that we have as the school board to administer, as we do for the district.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Now, before we, let's have more discussion. Does any other board member have a suggestion of what they would like to add, or would they like to comment on what Byron has submitted? Tish?
Well, I'd like to comment. First of all, thank you for writing this. My concern was the way that it's written now is it kind of leaves it wide open in the future for other school boards down the road to deal with, or other city council members, because we're all not going to be here forever. So this is the way it's written. Thank you, Byron, for writing it. I think it protects a future situation or scenario that may happen. So I'm all on board with this new, the way Byron had written it. I think it just gives more protection.
Thank you, Tish. Anyone else have a comment? Oh, Lisa.
Yeah, I would just echo what Tish said. I think that this language would really help us quite a lot from a future position. And I know that this was not an action item, but I do feel like if it was potentially possible for us to take a vote as a board so that we could submit it to the council as something that was backed by the majority of the board, if that's the case, maybe that would give it a little bit more weight. I know it might not, but I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Anyone else? Byron, the second suggestion you had, is that part of it too? Nothing in this section shall be deemed to limit an authority vested in the city council. Did you-
No, sorry.
Okay, so that.
Yeah, no, that was just reference to the existing language.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. Okay. All right, now, yes.
I just want to mention one thing. So I had a conversation today with a member of the legal department. So, so I wanted to put this out there as a suggestion made by one of the attorneys. It's not. It's in the spirit of where you're at. It's a little bit different though.
Sure.
And so, this is not me recommending that, but I feel like to honor the conversation I had, I wanted to at least put it out there. It was maintaining basically what was there, and it says the authority conveyed in this section shall not be construed to interfere with the academic, educational, and programmatic responsibilities vested in the school board by federal or state law or by the city charter. It does not conceptually, I want to make sure too to not to muddy the waters too much, but to honor the conversation. It does not include a reference to appropriations or budget.
Yeah,
So,
I think it's
explicitly.
Yeah, it explicitly it's inclusive in terms of its enumeration of authority powers, which I think is limiting to the school board, as opposed to the version of the language I put together is intentionally broad and doesn't carve out specific conclusions because it's meant to capture all authority that we're granted through those documents. So I wouldn't scope our authority down in such a way.
Yeah, understood.
Okay, any other comments on that? Can you read that again, please?
What, that
Right,
version?
yes.
And again, this was just and I want to make sure this is clear too. This is not an envoy from the council. This is just a conversation about, is there a way to find something that's middle? And here's a version without any authority from anybody, just a conversation point. But it was the authority conveyed in this section shall not be construed to interfere with the academic, educational, and programmatic responsibilities vested in the school board by federal or state law or by the charter. But I understand what Byron's saying is it's saying we're not going to interfere with you around these three issues, where Byron's language is basically you agree you're not going to interfere with any of the powers granted to us, period.
Yeah.
And so they're different they are conceptually close, but different things.
Do we have any comments on the legal opinion that was given versus Byron's? Oh,
And I want to make sure it's clear, so not necessarily a legal opinion per se, but it was a conversation with Trevor McCord. Trevor and I, in the legal department, had offered to have some conversations, so we had some dialogue this afternoon, just to kind of talk through, and he's like, well, what do you think about this?
okay. Okay, do we agree that the language that Byron submitted is the appropriate one that we want to submit to the council?
Yeah.
Does everyone agree with that?
I'm comfortable with that.
Do we need to vote on it, or?
Well, voting gives them more weight to it, I
Okay.
guess.
I guess in that spirit, maybe I'll make a motion to pass a resolution.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
makes sense.
In service of the language that's I read off first, and I'll read it again just for
The record?
the record, which is nothing herein, and this is, sorry, motion to pass a resolution to suggest this addition to the ordinance under consideration by the city council, which has passed first reading around the CIO and administrative powers. Nothing herein shall be construed to infringe upon the authority of the Portsmouth School Board under RSA 189 or Section 6(3) of the city charter, including but not limited to its authority over line item appropriations, contracting, staffing, and the administration and operation of the public schools.
Second.
Do we have a second? Second? Okay, any more discussion? Okay, can we have a roll call, please, Patty?
Genevieve Beckstead Muskie,
Yes.
Tish Campbell,
Yes.
Nancy Kleberg,
Yes.
Brian French,
Yes.
Byron Maddow,
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Passed.
That's it? Okay.
All right.
Okay, so I will give this to Trevor tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, let's move on to the consideration and approval of the Connie Bean request. You all got the artwork and the descriptions, and we heard from Rick Bean. Do we have a motion to approve the plan for the Connie Bean Memorial?
So moved.
Do
Second.
we have a second? Any discussion?
No, I think it's a great idea.
Did anybody know Connie Bean? I mean, I've been here a long time and I never knew her, so she goes back a while. Yeah, I know her son very well, but
Wow.
I did not know Connie Bean, but always heard stories about how wonderful she was.
Well, and I would just like to say, what a great way of honoring, Portstonian, as I call him, which I don't even know if that's a word, but just honoring someone who's done so much for the community. I think it's just a great way to keep the history alive.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'll just also add, I think back looking, the honoring is really important, but I was thinking as her son was speaking, that these types of things also help to inspire, other community members to take similar paths. And that's just, yep.
Very good.
And it was so lovely to see how proud of his mom he was. You could
Yeah, yeah. Oh, good. Well, hopefully we have a lot of Connie Beans in our community and many more to come. Okay, I guess we need to take a roll call vote, correct?
Genevieve Beckstead Muskie,
Yes.
Tish Campbell,
Yes.
Nancy Kleberg,
Yes.
Brian French,
Yes.
Byron Maddow,
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Did we lose her again?
Yes.
Okay.
Passed.
Thank you, Lisa.
She's on the satellite.
Okay. We have a new memorial wall at our Connie Bean Center. Okay, we will move on to date setting for annual goals for our board. We have
We
that.
already have that
We
taken
have
care
that.
of.
Okay.
So,
That's
new high.
next Tuesday at 6:30.
Okay.
And while we're on it, shall we vote on this other meeting we have to have?
More discussion,
Oh,
because it wasn't on the agenda.
okay. So should we discuss
do it
it
at
now?
the end.
We'll do it at the end.
yeah.
Okay, okay. Okay, new hires.
New hires, we updated you in non-public session about new hires. And this is the list. These folks are you empower administration, empower me, to hire folks over the summer without coming back to you, the professional folks that you would normally approve. This is the list. As I mentioned in non-public, we have one of these at the time that we published it that we thought was official. It is now not official. The outcome is not clear whether or not it's going to happen, and that's a school psychologist position. So so I'll report back to you, or depending on when we get going again, would bring that person back for consideration of the board. Otherwise, we look forward. I think we did pretty well in our hiring season. Sometimes even with in some cases we had decent sized pools, in other cases we had some small pools, but we did very well with some of our small pools in this case. So we're feeling good about the folks we're bringing on board, and appreciate the board giving us the opportunity to move quickly during the summer, which is important. So
Are there many more positions to fill?
at this point,
There's-
go ahead.
Just one, we've got the interview with tomorrow,
Yeah, I was going to say, but
and then I think we're winding down. We're in the home stretch, but knock wood, I'm always hesitant to say anything.
Did I
because-
see there was a hiring thing for paras?
there is.
Okay.
And that is that happening tomorrow?
Tomorrow. Yep.
And so there's a like a job fair hiring
Yeah, that's what I couldn't think
type
of that
deal.
word.
And again, this is our new special ed director, Dan Alexander, who's like, well, have you ever done this? And it's like, we have not done it recently. So he's like, all right, let's do it. So so that is happening tomorrow. I don't have the date and time.
I think it's tomorrow, and it's midday. I want to
Yeah.
say it's 10, 11 o'clock-ish, middle of the day.
And how many hires are you hoping for?
That's a
I
good
think
question.
outstanding. I feel like what the conversation, Brian, you and I were just in this 8.
It's, it's from 10 to 12
Thank you.
on Wednesday, and yes, you're correct.
It's 8 again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Good idea.
yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. But it's definitely not a passive approach to trying to get those positions filled. So
We're hopeful.
Yeah, hopefully we're coming back with a great report about how wonderful it was.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll move on to consideration and approval of policies, and we have Byron.
Thank you. I'm going to do these one at a time, I think.
Probably a good idea.
So the first one is first reading for New Hampshire Parental Bill of Rights, AB. If I have a motion to approve first reading, we can discuss.
Second, or,
Can I just make a
So, yeah.
point? A, B, and the following J, I, C, J,
Yeah.
we need to
One
make a
reading.
motion to suspend our
Thank you.
rules so that
Okay.
we can do these in a single read because of the impact that they're going to have on getting the school year started.
Okay, so I'll move to suspend the rules to take individually policies AB and JICJ for a single reading. Second?
so moved.
And that suspension would need 2/3
Yep.
of
Right.
Yep,
people present.
yep. So, hold on, taking notes. Okay. Tish Campbell,
Yes.
Nancy Clayberg,
Yes.
Brian French,
Yes.
Byron Maddow,
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
No, and I had wanted to speak to that before the vote, but I guess we'll leave that for now.
So we have,
So it's 4-2.
that's 2/3, isn't it?
That's 2/3.
Okay, so we can,
Do we want Lisa the opportunity to speak, or no?
well,
Go ahead.
so that was just to suspend the rules. So we don't have a motion on the table as it stands now.
Yeah, I didn't agree. I wanted to speak to suspending the rules.
Okay.
I don't think we should do the communication policy in a single read in the summer when parents aren't here to have the opportunity to more fully attend to it and weigh in.
Okay, shall we continue? We had the vote passed, correct?
Yeah.
But I would say, I would just say the vote was prior to Lisa's opportunity to
Oh,
speak to the
all right.
motion.
Shall we vote again?
So I
Make another
so I
vote
think-
to suspend the
So I,
rules.
so
Take that
I
one
think
out.
it would feel appropriate to
Okay,
reconsider the motion to suspend in light of Lisa's concerns. So,
okay. I apologize, Lisa, I didn't see a hand up.
that wasn't you,
Yeah,
that we missed it
okay.
as Patty's trying to take notes
I
and
know.
do all these other
Okay.
things, so we missed
Okay.
the hand.
Okay,
So do we have a motion to suspend?
Just a point of clarification. I just want to speak or get Patty to speak to the rationale for why a single read on these is important.
we are starting the school year in about 2 weeks. It is currently state law that both AB and JICJ are in effect. AB, the Parental Bill of Rights, in addition to having a policy, we are required by law to post it to our website, share it in handbooks for students and employees. And then JICJ, we want to make sure that we communicate clearly to families what our expectations would be for the bell-to-bell suspension of use of cell phones. Currently at the high school, they have an off and away policy, which does not line up with the current law in the state.
For JICJ, wasn't there a time component of that as well? Like we had to have that before the school year started?
That was the recommendation by NHSBA.
Okay, it's a recommendation by NH. Okay, so state law on Bill of Rights, but there's the New Hampshire School Board Association is a recommendation on the other one. Okay, maybe we'll do these individually. Just
Well, we've got the motion to suspend the rules.
right. I'm saying
Okay.
we'll do individual suspensions. I think because it seems like the rationale is different.
Okay.
Just suggesting, I guess. So, for AB, which is New Hampshire Parent Bill of Right, I'd like to move to suspend the rules to pass in single read. Yeah.
Okay.
Policy AB.
So is there a second
We
to
have a second.
suspend the rules?
Second.
Okay.
Any more discussion?
And so that means the others are going to be
Separate.
separate.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, why don't we have, no more discussion on that? We're just voting to suspend the rules that the New Hampshire Parental Bill of Rights will be a single reading.
Yep.
Genevieve Beckstead Muskie.
No.
Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
Yes.
Brian French.
Yes.
Byron Maddow.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
5-1. So we can do a single read on AB.
Okay, look for a motion to approve Parental Bill of Rights AB.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Byron, do you want to explain it first?
Well, I'll do my best. This coming out of policy was relatively prescriptive from state law, as I understood it, which was this is the New Hampshire Parental Bill of Rights as defined by the state law. It has to be adopted in policy by the school boards, and to Patty's point, it has to be posted on the website and maybe other places too. I'm not entirely sure. So there wasn't a lot of wiggle room in terms of the language that was in this Bill of Rights. That's the as I understood the push.
Thank you. Are there any questions, comments? Shall we have the vote?
To approve AB, Genevieve Beckstead Muskie.
No.
Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
Yes.
Brian French.
Yes.
Byron Maddow.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
No.
4-2.
Okay. All right. Well, so a clarifying question, if I may, for the communication device sample policy. If we don't pass this on single read, do we know like what are the implications or repercussions we could face?
I think if we don't pass it on single read, then it would just be first read.
Yeah.
Go back to the committee, have to come back again for second read,
Right.
and then,
Would it have to go back to committee, or could it
not
just?
necessarily,
Okay.
but this would be first reading for JICJ.
Now, go ahead, keep going.
I was just going to say, it might make sense to just pass this a single read, just because I don't know that we have the same level of, from my understanding, urgency around this particular policy. And that, to Lisa's point, may give more time for parents to understand the implication of it.
So what I don't know is that we would, I think what would be challenging, I don't know what I'm trying to think about this. So I think we would still be moving ahead in terms of implementation of stuff, in terms of procedural implementation, not policy of the board. But we would anticipate that we will follow state law, and we would want to introduce what that looks like to students as they're coming into the building to start the year, and not start one way and then a month later switch.
Well, you also have practice out of line of policy, right? So I could see the issue there. Okay, so
So it's not.
yeah.
So we would not be procedurally.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be in violation of school board policy.
But someone
I
could
think we would.
someone could object saying it's not policy.
They
Potentially.
could, but we have a bunch of things that we do that are procedural and not policy based.
Lisa has her hand up.
So I think it would be. I'd worry a little bit about. Look, I have not had an in-depth conversation with the principal at the high school or the middle on this, and they might have a different take and might not think that they're concerned about operationally what that does for staff, students as they enter, and then and maybe they'd have less of a concern. I'm just thinking about it. If I was a building principal, I'd want to be able to walk in and say, this is what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it. The year has begun, and off we go. Again, that's not me speaking directly on behalf of those two principals. So.
Lisa's got her hand. Lisa.
Oh, Lisa.
Yeah, thank you. So just in terms of the ability to do this on a single reading, I guess I understand the situation of wanting to give kids that continuity of starting school for 2 years. But in this case, I think it would be irresponsible to pass something when we don't really know how it will be enforced at the middle school or the high school or the elementary schools for that matter. And I am also very concerned in terms of how we are going to accommodate students with disabilities and medical issues without creating stigma around how these policies are enforced. And I also don't want to put undue burden on classroom teachers to enforce something that they're not getting the correct backup to enforce. So I'm not sure that the exact mechanics of JIC student conduct as a policy are the right ones to use to enforce this. And I also want to ensure that procedurally we have a guarantee that someone's answering the phones when we call the student, because that, at least at the high school, is not the case. And I think that has to change if you're telling parents that kids can't have access to these devices during the day.
Thank you, Lisa. Nathan?
I just have a quick question. We haven't made a motion, right? Is this not? Okay. So then I won't jump in.
I hear where Lisa's coming from. I just I think we should, so I'll make a motion to suspend the rules to pass JICJ on first reading.
So it would have a second reading?
No,
Just a single reading?
that's what I'm motioning to suspend the rules for that specific.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Can you just review, we could institute this even if the policy isn't passed yet? Is that what you were saying before?
So,
We have to follow the law.
kind of, I mean,
did he
so,
say?
so, I think Nathan said, I think I heard Nathan say we have to follow the law.
We have
So, what I was saying was that there's a lot of things that we do that are not policy driven. They're procedures that we do, that, policy lays out goals and then we do things, underneath that, or sometimes there is no policy that's connected to something and we just do them. So I worry about the potential, if we're ultimately going to follow the law, I worry about the potential upheaval because of the timing of what we're doing. If we're ultimately going to end up there, I'd rather set the core things in motion, have the ability for staff to communicate those things right as we are going in the next couple of weeks, having those conversations. Because I have concerns about not having that happen, and then 3 weeks into school being now we're doing it.
So what you're saying is if we pass this tonight, you'll be sure that everyone understands how it's going to be implemented on the first day of school?
That is a very high standard. So I think we will make reasonable efforts that are designed to inform as many people as we can as to what it's going to be. But if the standard was on anything, are all the people going to be deeply informed about this, about anything? I would say I can't guarantee you that all the people are going to be deeply informed on any particular issue. I can guarantee that we will take reasonable steps to try to inform all of our parents and our students what the expectations are.
I think the difference between, it's like a chicken and egg kind of a thing, and I think the difference between having the policy in place will enable administrators and teachers to have the backing of what the school board believes is prudent as far as how cell phones are handled, rather than setting a procedure up that doesn't have teeth or weight behind it, where if we know there are studies that talk about social media use, we talk about distractions, we've had these things, there's a reason it was passed at the state level. I just think that having a policy would prevent some of the confusion that could arise.
Yeah, and my take is this is probably, we're not going to change it on the second reading, right? So, and I think it's probably not that big of a deal. There's already policies around electronic devices, and if we're just going to change that, I think it makes more sense to try to change it beginning of the school year and get one reading done and
And I would
be done with
also
it.
point out that in the policy itself, there is a provision for revisions and edits to come back to the board at a future date and time. So the policy, I believe, speaks to a year out, but if we are seeing things that are problematic, there's no reason that couldn't come back in January or in March and do it sooner, especially with regard to students who need devices for fulfilling goals and IEPs.
Right.
Which is addressed under the exceptions.
Yep.
Nathan?
Yeah, I just say, to go along with everything, this is the easier part with this, is passing the policy, because with process, it's a nightmare, and it's going to be a nightmare. But having a policy that we've already voted on gives us as a school district as much time as we can to prepare for what that's going to look like, to not inform, but make sure that people are abiding by it, which I think is obviously going to be the biggest hump in the road to try and get over. But to pass it tonight, I think, would be the best way and give us the best shot as a district to make sure that everyone is informed, but also is abiding by it, by the law, come the start of the school year.
Thank you, Nathan. Lisa?
So at this point, are we discussing amendments to the policy itself, or are we still discussing whether to do it on single read? I just want to make sure I'm
Single read.
talking at the right.
Single read.
Single read right now.
2/3
Okay.
single read, suspend the rules.
Any other discussion?
On the motion to suspend the rules first, to have a single read.
Single read.
On JICJ.
Okay. Can we vote?
Genevieve Beckstead Muskie,
No.
Tish Campbell,
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg,
Yes.
Brian French,
Yes.
Byron Maddow,
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
No.
Okay, so with that, I'll look for a motion to approve the unauthorized communication device, JICJ, on single read.
So
Any
move.
discussion?
So move. Wait a second, yeah. Okay.
Okay, we have a second first.
Oh.
Tish?
So, under the exceptions where it says, the superintendent or designee may approve additional exceptions case-by-case basis, how would that, what would that process look like? Do you have any idea what that would look like if someone,
I don't at this, at this moment. I think the intent, my intent in any discretionary power is that if a student, we talk about the medical disability or language, language proficiency needs. I think our intent would be that we're going to meet those needs, What, in terms of I think it would be a consideration of those types of situations, and then trying to come to a decision about making sure that we're meeting those needs of students. What I can't give you is exactly until we get into some case by case scenarios. Like, how do you judge that? Because and what in each of these scenarios, it wouldn't exclusively be. It might. We might not always agree with the family
right?
need, right? So I just want to make sure that that's clear too. Not that we're looking to say no, but that also that I think there's be as we go, trying to land on what that fine tune what that standard is, where we feel like there's clearly there is clearly a medical disability or language based need, or something else that I'm not considering at the moment.
Let me actually define, I guess, more what
Yeah.
I was trying to say is, what would, if someone wanted to approach you or they approached their teacher or the principal,
Yep.
what would that process look like? Who would they go to say, hey,
Yeah.
I've had this happen, I need my phone,
Right.
go, what happens now?
Yeah, I think what's going to happen is that's not going to start at my office. It's going to start in conversations at building level with the principal.
And then that faculty member would know to escalate it to your
That's where we
office.
need to go.
Okay.
But a lot of this stuff, I think, and I appreciate the concern about, the concern about single readings. Anytime we do a single reading, there's a reason why policies are very often are multiple reading opportunities. But this was, there's a legislative process where we create laws. There are people elected to be part of that process, and they made a point to not say this is 6 months out or this is 9 months out. This is next school year. And so, I think I think it's challenge. I think it'll be challenging for us. It's hard for us to not be in compliance with the law a lot, and to be in conversations where we're where we are multiple times over the course of the year being like, we're not going to abide by the law, or we're potentially not going to abide by the law, that can be hard. And so I just want to set up those schools for the least. This will be, I think Nathan's on it. This is going to be challenging culturally, no matter what. I don't foresee a situation where we're not arriving at the same place. But if we were to delay the implementation of the core parts of it, I think it creates even additional confusion.
Byron, Nathan, Genevieve. And Lisa.
I think what's my take on this is that I agree. I think the single read is. I think two things. I agree with Brian. I don't think it's going to change first read to second read. So I think that's the case. I think that I want to thank Patty for sending out the Parent Square notification around the cell phone policy or the administration generally to the parent community. I believe also it was our Seacoast Online article about it as well.
Not with an interview with me, but I think they've covered the fact that in the
okay.
region this is coming. This is
So I
happening.
think there's been some communication, and we haven't heard much from the community on it. We haven't gotten an email. There's nothing here for public comment. And I think the reason that is because until people get in the building and they're faced with reality, I think that's when we're going to hear about it. So I don't know that a second read in and of itself would really go so far as to I mean, I understand the spirit of it. I do. I just think that the reality is that until people are faced with that as a practice, it's not going to be something that the community really engages with. So I think, as far as the first read, second read stuff goes, and then I think it is state law. So I'm going to refrain from sort of editorializing around the wisdom of the overall policy. But yeah.
Thank you, Byron. Nathan, Genevieve, and then Lisa.
Yeah, I mean, we all don't like the feeling when our hands are tied, but that's what it is. And I have a few points, and I want to put the community aside and parents aside, and I want to focus on students, staff, and administrators. The first point that I want to focus on, which is may have an unwanted materialistic sort of aspect to it, is a few hundred students at the high school may have a laptop that's different from a school Chromebook. This policy isn't just phones, it's all personal devices. And as soon as this bill started coming up through the House and the Senate, that's immediately what I thought of, was I can't even use this computer anymore if this policy's passed. So as much as I'm over here saying, let's get to single reading, right? But there's a lot more that goes into this policy than just phones. Certain classes have certain workloads that may need a different application that Chromebooks can't handle. I've run into that multiple times at the high school, and I know other students have. That's mostly why they get nicer computers, is because they know that they need those heavier applications to help them with workloads. And that was one of my immediate thoughts when I saw this, was phones, Apple Watches I can deal with, but why take my computer, right? That is a very much something that helps me a lot in the classroom. Secondly, I want to look at the teachers. So if this is all about going along with the law, but then we talk about the process for it, do we have hall monitors? Does Steve and admin go to the union to say, let's amend the contracts to have you as hall monitors for 20 minutes out of your planning block? What does that even look like? What do those discussions look like? That's another few months down the road. That may not even happen. Then you're back at square one. So that was also something that I thought of. So in Lowell, they did this last year, Lowell, Mass. You had the community up in arms. You had students up in arms because they were torn between, do I abide by this or do I just go on my phone? And then you had the teachers who had absolutely no clue what to do because they didn't know if they were an enforcer or if they were just there to still teach in their classrooms. Patty, as you mentioned, I've always been, and Steve has always been, in favor of this off and away policy. Obviously, we weren't able to keep going with that anymore. But one of the things that I firmly believed in was, in a classroom with a good teacher, you won't see the phones out. The phones were never the issue. And honestly, when people try and say that this is the best answer to all personal devices, because I don't want to focus on phones, all personal devices, is to take them away. When you're trying to say that you're a country, a state, a school district, a school that goes towards the future, but you can't even use the devices that are closest to that and to teach with them, it's so contradicting. And all of you, I think all of you guys are on my side with this. I'm preaching to the choir, right? But I think everyone just has to hear it. So it's the process for me that is either going to make this be somewhat okay or really, really bad, because I feel like that's all this can really go, right? So those conversations need to be had, and at the high school, I have no clue what this is going to look like. And to even pass this policy tonight, to then have those discussions, Nancy, as much as it's optimistic to say, like, are you sure you can get this done by school? I don't think anyone could. I think that's fair to say. So I don't know what this is going to look like. I'm here for if you guys if you need anything, but with process, I don't know what this is going to look like. And quite frankly, I don't know if I have any ideas on how we're supposed to go through it. Because like I sort of mutter under my breath, we need to follow the law and students need to follow the law. But what does that look like? And what discussions need to be had so it's truly being brought through in a way that doesn't have everyone in the community up in arms.
Thank you, Nathan. Genevieve?
My concern is special education with the IEPs. How many people, those IEPs are written in advance. Now, what we're requiring people to do is scramble. Special education is going to be scrambling to rewrite these IEPs. These IEPs that already exist did not include this legislation as a consideration for what their students are entitled to. And now we're saying that, don't worry about it. We got you. We'll take care of it. I know it's not part of the IEP, but if you get someone with, this is what the law says, this is what the law says, this is what we're going to do, and that's our follow through, you're going to have parents, students, and teachers struggling to accommodate things that weren't even a consideration in an IEP. And now you're putting that burden back on special education. So I don't think forcing it through is the right decision. I think parents have a right to be heard, and I understand legislation, and I understand it's the law, and I understand we're supposed to abide by this, but I also think that our obligation is still to the community to allow them to be heard. And throwing this out first read without consideration, a week before or what have you, I don't think it's sufficient timing for people, parents, special education, students.
Okay, I think we have Lisa and then Brian. Thank you, Genevieve.
So I think I don't want to repeat myself, but I have a lot of concerns around enforcement and a lot of concern, particularly at the high school, about how parents will reach school. Because at least for the last few years, there's been more of a voicemail system where you go through and leave. So I completely respect the potential for cell phones to be distracting in many situations, and the intent of the law isn't necessarily on that front that far away from an often way type of policy. But I think we need to be able to look people in the eye and say, you will get a human when you call the school when you cannot reach your kid through another means. And then I have many broader concerns about the enforcement discriminating against students with disabilities the way this policy is written. I know there's a lot of kids who use technology that don't have 504s or IEPs that may now want to request one to get the accommodation to be able to say, take photos of the board in a class. I have a student who uses assistive technology, and I don't think every single piece of what they do with tech every day is necessarily written down word for word in their IEP. But the way the discipline here is structured is separate from saying that we'll have consideration of students with disabilities. There's nothing in the discipline that says that we will consider their disabilities when we're looking at discipline. And I think that we need to be explicit about that. Otherwise, we're telling students where IEPs that are intended to help them learn executive function and intended to help them learn impulse control and all of these other things, we're telling them they're just going to have another thing that they have a disciplinary record for, which I just can't support. And I also know that there are students with disabilities who use video, who use photo, who use audio, and that blanket prohibition on all of those things in the policy makes no exception for students with disabilities, and that is unacceptable. So I just don't think this is fully ready for prime time if the intention is to do it on a single read. I just don't think we really bake through all of the ways that we would want to appropriately support our teachers and staff in enforcing it, or support our students so that they're not being discriminated against if they still need to use technology. So I don't see how we can pass this without creating a world of problems for some of our students who already have enough challenges. And I can try to offer alternative language on the fly for some amendments, but I wasn't aware that this would be done in a single read, so I didn't write anything out ahead of time. So I don't know. I guess I might ask Zach specifically, like, are we going to change anything about how the phones are answered at the high school?
Are we going to change?
Like, are we going to have somebody answer the phones at the high school when people call instead of having that voicemail system that they use as part of this policy?
I can't speak to the staffing pattern of the. I mean, I can't fully answer that question right at this moment. I mean, I think I understand the concern about the ability to contact students, and that parents need to be able to speak to someone when they need to be in touch with a student, and that we will have an increased obligation to make sure that there are there's the means during certain hours to be able to talk to a human in order to more immediately have contact with the student. But I can't tonight give you here's what the approach to phone coverage was under last year, and here's what the changed phone coverage plan would look like for the upcoming year. I'm not in a position to do that this evening.
No, that's fair. I mean, what about in terms of students with disabilities? Like, do you think that we can change the wording in the discipline section to try to better offer a period of time where people can either seek 504s or IEPs or amend them, so that if that is a concern due to specific medical needs or disabilities, that student isn't immediately in a discipline situation?
Well, I think under the policy, it creates the wiggle. I'm trying to get to the actual line.
Well, does it? Because the enforcement is separate from the disabilities section.
Lisa,
And there's no mention of disabilities in the enforcement section.
On line 37, it says that students with these needs, and then on line 37 says, shall be exempt from this policy. So it's the whole policy, which would include any of the consequences and violations.
And what about in terms of recording? So they wouldn't be prohibited from recording or taking pictures or doing any of those other things if that's part of their accommodations?
I mean, we're going to have to go through, and it speaks to some of what Genevieve was talking about. I think in terms of the implementation of what we're going to do on the ground, it's going to be clunky at the beginning. And it's just, I don't think I think what we'll need to be able to do is engage families in those conversations. And Genevieve was talking about, it sounded like the possibility of like, well, there's a student who's utilized phone for things that without the phone, we might need an IEP accommodation either for the phone itself or for something else that replaces what the phone was providing.
The IEP, it's just that when they were writing the IEP, it wasn't even a consideration.
What do you even have to think about it?
They didn't even have to think about it. Now it's like, oh God, we didn't put that in our IEP. you're going to have special education scrambling day one
Right.
to accommodate these children.
And I think what we, in terms of implementation, I think that we can be in terms of the way in which we're implementing as we start, trying to be just kind of have as much as we can. And this is always dangerous to say this, but a common sense approach to here's what's going on. And what's common is not always common. I understand that, but here are these situations, and then trying to go through an analysis of the particular situation, and then giving some grace while we're then, because we know those IEP processes are longer process, take a while to go through. And so, I think leaning on interim arrangements, however, it's going to be hard too at the same time, because it's not every are we going to end up with, by the time we go through those processes, are we going to have every student with a disability has the ability to have a phone? No. We're going to go through a process to analyze, are the things that are present with the phone, is it the appropriate route to bridging the disability? And can it be, how do we work through, we'll have to deal with these this will be something that's going to happen over years. How do we deal with situations where we okay it for certain aspects of bridging a disability, but then it is used in other ways that are not connected to, as well, or not connected to that disability, and then become disruptive to school operations, right? So, this is going to be years of mucking through these types of conversations with folks, and I don't know that there's we will not have a perfectly aligned procedural plan that spells out every one of those scenarios in advance of those scenarios hitting. And I think Nathan, you said, we're going to hit, or maybe Byron said, it's like families right now, despite putting out a notice that we were going to potentially be doing this tonight, nobody's here and nobody's emailed, that we'll start engaging these conversations when we get back. And then there'll be some families who are like, wait a minute, I didn't think this was going to apply to my particular kid in this particular scenario. And then we're going to have to kind of work through those conversations. And I think, Nathan, you were saying some of the same things. This is going to be a slog as we try to engage this as a group.
So,
Okay, we have Brian. French?
Yeah. Just to me, this is just sort of chicken and an egg. It's like there was a state law that was passed. You pass a policy, and then you figure out. The law is already there. So, and we're not saying. I think your practical take on it makes a lot of sense, but I do think there's a lot of stuff there to kind of figure out. I think 90% of it will be easy, and then the rest is going to be really difficult and messy, and try to figure that out. But I think, just putting the stake in the ground now doesn't make probably any difference of how you guys are going to react at the beginning of the school year to try to work through this. That's my take. Whether we pass it tonight or pass it in the second reading, I don't think it really makes a whole lot of difference. And I would just assume pass it now, to be honest with you, but.
Byron. Can I ask a question first? Do we know what other school districts are doing? Do we have any idea of what other school districts are doing?
I'm not aware of a bunch of people putting this on pause.
Rolling.
I think it's just- I don't
know
know.
that the Superintendent's Association has been putting out videos for, folks to help message to families. So I think folks are
Gearing up
moving
for it.
toward doing this. Yeah.
Okay, Byron, I'm sorry, I interrupted.
So what Nathan said before about personal communication devices was really interesting to me, because it was nuanced in terms of like laptops and the various devices. And I went and looked at the RSA again, and it doesn't define personal devices in the RSA. It's defined in the policy as from the New Hampshire School Board Association. And so it seems like and I probably understand the rationale from New Hampshire School Board Association as to why they got specific on personal communication device. But it does make me question the sample policy and a bit that it went overly specific versus like what's in the actual RSA around like what's required. And I don't. So I think past Byron probably didn't do a good enough job of due diligence in policy, and so I think the thing to do if we wanted to take it back. Let me just put that. I'm not suggesting this right now. I'm just saying if we wanted to take it back, I think the thing to do would be to table it instead of to vote it down because it may have other consequences. So. Yeah.
Table it to the next policy committee meeting, which I believe it's the end of August, isn't it?
We don't have our cheat sheets anymore. So sad. I think tabling it would, or just maybe just a motion to send it back to policy would be the move. If we didn't think that we have support to pass it in the first reading, I'm not convinced that.
27th.
I'm not convinced that rollout procedure would be drastically different, and that if we push this through, I just think we can do a better job with the specifics of it. So I think that's where.
Does the state law just say cell phones? The RSA just say cell
It
phones?
says personal communication devices. The school boards and board trustees shall develop a policy and adopt a policy governing the use of student cell phones and other personal communication devices. Is a laptop a personal communication device? And this gets into the weeds, but ostensibly you could do things to prevent laptops from. I don't know. It's muddy. I don't know if I'd call a laptop a personal communication device necessarily in the spirit of the law. It doesn't specify it in the statute.
An iPad.
Yeah.
An iPad. An iPad is a.
Is an iPad a personal communication? It's
Sure it is.
Yeah,
I can
it's
email,
the
I
way
can
that they
photograph,
defined
I
it in
can do
the
same
sample
thing I do
policy
with
that made,
phone.
because it was anything that could contact anyone in any way, shape, or form.
Well, that's
basically.
what I'm saying is the
That's communication.
the policy is overly broad. The policy gets specific on and enumerates the things. The actual state law just says personal electronic device, personal electronic communication device. So I think there's maybe some wiggle room there with laptops specifically, but yeah.
So, and I have to say, I do agree with that. After hearing the discussions, it is very muddy.
Yeah.
On lots of, my son used to bring his personal computer because what certain classes he was in, what they were given was not adequate. And I just think of how his education would have been depleted if he didn't have his own laptop for certain classes. So yeah, just that alone, and then the discussion about special education, and you're putting teachers in an awkward position if a student might be taking pictures of what's on the board because they just can't take the notes. But that student might not have that in their IEP, so now the teacher's in a conundrum waiting for approval of, is this okay? I agree that it should be sent back to committee, that it's a little too muddy.
Okay,
right
so
now.
so we could do this. Right now, we have suspended the rules to pass on first reading, and we have a motion to pass this on the first reading. The question I have is procedurally, how do we unwind that so that we can pass first reading to
Well,
go
but
back for?
There's also nothing saying that the board, the policy committee is a subset of the board. The board could make the language changes
now.
right
Right
now,
now.
instead of sending this back, change what it is that needs to be changed in here.
Yeah.
Vote on the change and move forward, because going back to policy committee is going to prolong things. Not that I'm trying to rush this, but I think that we do a lot of sending policies back. And over, the 4 years that I've been here, I know that we try not to do that, so that policies spending more time and then it takes longer for things to come back.
Okay, let's have Brian, and then Nathan, do you have your hand up?
And-
Okay,
and-
and Byron, I don't know.
In
Byron,
light of.
chime in anytime.
And again, I was ignorant to the RSA's was much different like that than the policy, the way it's written. If we're going to, the way for us to change it tonight is if we just loosen it up a lot.
Yeah.
And then we can tighten it up later, in my opinion, because I think the obvious ones are cell phones and smartwatches, and maybe that's as narrow as we need to make it to start. I don't know if that's sufficient enough, or if the organization would have to pivot a lot, but at least maybe it could happen in stages, right? Okay, we're just gonna deal with, cell phones and watches. And then a new policy or updated policy can come out if, after you guys have thought about it and say, okay, well, these are the restrictions around personal laptop uses around this policy. I don't know.
Yeah. So the things I hear what you're saying, and
Should we vote down the motion that's now on the floor and then propose another motion that just says cell phones and smartwatches?
the reason I what's that?
I'm confused on the motions at this point.
So
but-
What's the motion?
I don't want to vote the motion down that's on the floor because
Because the headline will be, school board votes against cell phone.
All we can do is we can make an
That's
amendment.
what it would be,
Oh, I see.
right?
We
So
can
that's
make
the,
an
or it could be.
amendment.
That's what it would be.
Or it could
make an
be,
amendment.
and it'll be interpreted in
Yeah.
certain circles as such.
yeah.
So I think that's what you're trying to avoid, right?
So who made the motion? Was it?
It was,
You made the motion,
Oh, I made the
Brian seconded the motion,
Okay.
I think is.
Can I
no,
amend?
no, it was Brian French made the
Yeah.
motion, Tish seconded it to approve this in a single read,
Okay.
to approve this.
So can we make a friendly amendment?
Yeah. So
Would the first and second agree to that this pertains to cell phones
Yeah.
and smartwatches only?
well, I'm gonna make a
Go
friendly
ahead.
amendment here, or attempt
You do
to.
it better than me.
Yeah. We'll see. So the first part of the friendly amendment is going to strike the second paragraph of A, which defines a personal communication device.
So
And-
I'm actually going to stop you for a
Okay.
second, because as I'm reading this,
Yeah.
line 6 into 7 goes use of personal communication devices, blah, 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 for non-academic means. So kind of what we were talking about with the laptop, and even a student maybe snapping a picture of a diagram on a board or something fits into the academic needs category, doesn't it?
But that's just the purpose. That's the
Yeah, that's the
justification.
purpose.
Okay.
The way they're structuring it.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying,
Yeah.
though.
I mean, can we reword it that it can be used only for academic purposes?
Well,
That's in B.
yeah.
We have to look at the RSA to really
Yeah.
understand that.
So
Sorry, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but as I was reading, I'm like, this seems to be another caveat to.
yeah. I'm gonna try to get through the amendment and see how I do. So I want to try and strike that first paragraph for the purpose of policy and communication devices does non-district, and just what does the bill say about it?
Thank you, everyone, for trying to get this together.
Why can't I read it now? Okay. Yeah, so we'll strike that first paragraph, and then the other thing, or that second paragraph in A, and then I want to. My next one would be to just remove D entirely, which would be the consequences and violations. Because I think,
I'm editing up there.
okay.
What's in red is what's being removed.
Okay, and strike D entirely, which references I mean, this is just not in the state law. I mean, yeah, students are not permitted to use electronic devices referred to or take pictures of any staff members distributed. So, and then the consequences are within JIC. So hopefully that would, so I would just take this entirely off because hopefully that would, to Lisa's point around the best place to have the consequences come from.
So you're removing all of section D?
Yeah.
Or we can say that the school district or the administration can come up with
Yeah.
consequences.
The exceptions section is very close to what it says in the RSA from my reading. So I don't know that, and I definitely appreciate what Genevieve is saying about the existing IEPs, but I think that's going to have to happen either way, that those are going to have to get rewritten.
Yeah, after a couple of years. I mean, they're written for 3 years. That's the problem,
Right, and so
yeah.
if we do this now or next reading, like it's just like but I definitely appreciate all of the special education work that's going to have to go into that.
But that could also go as to one of the exceptions that the superintendent can approve.
Yeah,
If
right,
the
yeah. So,
special ed approaches and says, listen, it's not in the IEP, this is a circumstance.
Right, additional
That could be an
exceptions.
exception
Yeah. Case by case.
to bypass that right now.
Byron, can I just clarify something
Yeah.
real quick?
I mean, it's not the cleanest way.
But the
and
recognition of an
law-wise-
IEP doesn't go with the blessing of the superintendent. The blessing of an IEP goes with the review of board. It's not something to fall upon your responsibility to determine whether it needs to be added to an IEP or not. That's special education's responsibilities.
And I think that the number of cases, I think it was challenging. Brian said before, like 90% of this is going to be, it won't affect, these conversations are going to come down to a sliver of students. And I like to think that the folks that you have that work for you are caring folks who are pretty gracious and worried about kids. And that they're lean as we muddle through what we could formalize through something like an IEP process is going to be to err on the side of kids until we're in a position to go through some type of formalized review process through something like an IEP or 504, something along those lines. But I understand the trepidation at the same time.
So right now, I don't know if everybody can see that. We've taken out the red paragraph, which is lines 10 through 14. So red means it's disappeared. I can't cross it off, otherwise I would here. We're leaving all of section B.
Which defines the period, basically,
Yep.
which is bell to bell.
Yep.
And then it makes a comment about students abiding by the policies and after-school curricular, which seems a little bit superfluous, but I don't think it's like damaging.
We've got exceptions, which we've
Keeping that,
identified as
correct.
being important, so that's staying. For consequences and violations, all we have in there is consequences for violations will be pursuant to policy JIC student conduct, or we can say will be left to school administration.
I think in the spirit of like probably coming back to this policy, that seems like maybe the way.
Yeah, the looser the better if
Yeah.
we're going to have something, and then we can tighten it up later.
I think we're still within the statute.
So then the part that says additionally, hold on, let me just close that side. Additionally is gone, first offense, second offense, that's gone. The review portion is staying. Dissemination is staying,
Yeah.
and the legal references we don't touch.
Yeah.
Can I suggest to go back to the IEPs, which I think is very important, where it says on line 34, where it says as identified by their IEP, can we reword that in a way that it's not just restricted to the IEP, that the special education teacher, the case manager, has an opportunity to make that decision without having to go through a formal exception process to the superintendent?
As identified by their case manager, comma, IEP, comma, or plan.
So,
That would work for me.
so, I mean, I think in terms of independent of this operationally, if we were not, depending on what we do with this, I think what's going to happen is we're going to run into these situations where parents reach out after the ban, and my student has these issues that are either academic or social emotional in nature, and they utilize the phone to deal with those issues. In the short run, as we try to transition, I think the idea, really what you're talking about, is like, if the kid's on a IEP, then it's going to be the case manager in consultation with some of the teachers and the principal being like, do you think Jimmy actually needs the phone for the purposes that they're expressing? What do we think? Informally, that's what would happen. And then once we hit a new, people can always call for an IEP team to come back together to review, to do that, and then that would be a formalized process. If we do include language that's about case manager, what I'm talking about, which would be what you'd expect. So people who, they get together and be like, do we think this is really necessary? What do we think? Yes, okay, we're going to do it for now. Eventually, the full IEP team will have an opportunity to review. I wouldn't want to have that language in there for the long run. I would still be like, the IEP team's a great place to be gatekeepers around whether or not this is necessary in connection with a disability or not. It's exactly the people you want at the table to make those types of decisions for the long term. It just takes a little while, like Genevieve said, in order to pull those
3 years.
together. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
IEP is a legal document, so,
Yep.
and it being a legal document, it's not something that can be easily or readily modified. So, for me, I would much rather have a member of the special education here guiding us to make sure that we were properly inclusive and addressing all items personally.
Is that solved by what's on further down in the paragraph, line 37, 38? Additionally, the superintendent or their designee, who could be,
Director of
as
Special Education.
Zach just explained, in this situation, may approve additional exceptions on a case-by-case basis.
So the designee could be the IEP team, the
Case manager.
the case
Whatever,
manager.
yeah, whatever
be-
he tells.
And it wouldn't be one singular thing. I think most of the time it would be, Phil calls me and I've got a student, and that student, the student has approached us,
I think, yeah.
and the family has approached us, and here's the situation, and here's what we think. Okay, have you talked to the case manager? Great. Have you talked to the teachers from last year, if it's early in the year? What's your understanding? Okay, do we think this is appropriate? Initially, those are the types of decisions we would make, and then
It's a pretty big caveat there that you can rely on, seems
Yeah.
like to me.
I think it's in there instead of having to wordsmith it to know that we've got that.
No, and I really appreciate that. I want to make sure, as Genevieve has been very open about this, is just making sure that students in that has a 504 or an IEP, that they are getting just that consideration, that they might need just that little extra.
Yep. And it would also apply to our English language learners as well.
Exactly.
Who might need something, who are not specifically called out in that section, but it's mentioned somewhere else in the policy.
Right, yeah.
So I think we've got all of that included in there, in that section.
Okay, Nathan, did you want to say something?
Yeah, because as much as I've been lifeguarding, getting tan, as Zach would just go on about forever.
I think you've been saving lives, helping out the community.
When I've been communicating with the high school admin, that's been one of the most real issues with this policy, was what happens when they get a call from a parent saying that for a social emotional nature reason, their student needs these devices. which has happened numerous times already since this bill has been passed by the state. So to keep it real, this is what's happening right now. And I think that what the caveat that's already in there would do it would work enough in this instance to make it so it would be smooth enough that it would work. Yeah, I'd say that it's good now.
Thank you.
And as you said before, we can review it later and tweak it once we know how this policy is going to roll out.
What are the bugaboos? What are we constantly tripping over? What do we have to fix?
What are we not thinking of?
I think
Right,
the ones.
exactly.
I think the ones. But I think what Nathan just brought up. Those will be to be very transparent. Those are going to be where our flashpoints are going to be. It's going to be families and/or students who will say, "I am anxious, and having my device listen to music on it chills me out." Those are going to be the hardest ones to work through. It's not going to be the ones where it's like, I use this to take a picture of the notes on the board. It's going to be, I'm anxious, my phone helps me be less anxious, either because of social anxiety and/or I'm nervous that the school is going to be under assault and I don't have my phone.
Yeah, that's what I was indirectly
And that's
referring to.
right. I
Yeah.
mean, that's going to be where the battle's going to be.
Exactly. Yeah.
And trying to, and what will be difficult about those conversations over the long run with both students and families will be, we may disagree on the threshold of the level of anxiety that someone needs to be able to muscle through in the course of a school day. And some families and some students might disagree with what we're asking them to, the level of anxiety we're asking them to take on from their perspective.
Thank you, Zach. I think we have Lisa. Oh, and Brian.
Thanks, Nancy. So I do feel much less apprehensive about this with the changes that we're contemplating. I think that we need.
Lisa, can you speak up a little more? Some of us are having trouble hearing you.
Sorry about that. Is that better?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm in the hotel lobby trying to let my kids sleep. So I think I am far less concerned about the policies with the changes that we've just made. I do feel like have a mechanism to come back to the board this April of the current school year for sort of an opportunity to massage anything that we might need to treat in terms of language, if we have a sense at that point that there's anything that's not playing out as intended with the policy, would be important to me. And I also think that from a special education and 504 perspective, I'm also curious about to what extent we're in a position to provide devices if the issue is that it's a personal device. I mean, I don't think that that's the case, but the process for a district provided device can take like months and months and months to get through the whole special education process and have that purchase happen. So I'm just curious about the thinking in terms of if we're tipping over into having to provide more devices to students because we don't want them on things that they're bringing in from home, or if it's more a question of BEOS is trying to ensure that there's a real academic or medical purpose to what they're using the device for.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa.
I just want to, sorry, go ahead, Brian.
Go ahead, absolutely. Brian.
I just want to mention, I think the only other line in there is line 6, where it actually lists off devices still. Either we make that
Strike
looser.
that. Yeah, I would strike that as well. Yeah.
Do we want to
Or
strike it or
we
just
just
say
say
cell
very
phones and?
specifically cell phones and watches,
Yep.
and leave the other ones off. I mean, I think whatever the loose interpretation is to help out the
I
administration.
would say cell phone, watches, and wearables would be my take.
What's a wearable besides a watch?
Well, you know.
Lots of
Google
Nancy,
Glasses?
give it 5 years and it's just out
Oh,
the
I see
window.
what you're saying. Okay.
Glasses.
A brain interface where I can just go like this.
All right, wearables.
So we consider the language of the law that's just cell phones and personal communication devices? I mean, do we need to specify other things specifically?
Well, I just don't want them to say, well, a laptop is a personal communication device.
Oh, no, I agree with you. I'm just wondering about the watches.
I think
Smartwatches are going
I
to be.
think a smartwatch is a cell phone, frankly.
Cell phones and
That's what I
wearable
think it is too.
personal
I
communication.
think that's the intent sort of
Yeah.
behind it.
Okay, Patty, can you review for us all these friendly amendments?
Well, I think it's just, we're editing, so this is the friendly edit. Okay, so one more time, and I'll explain to you my code because I can't do what I need to here. So red is gone, blue is new and in. So in Part A, purpose, the Portsmouth School District is committed to providing students with a learning environment free from disruptions. Use of personal communication devices, cell phones, smartwatches, and wearables for non-academic means often leads to disruptions in the learning environment for both individual students and the classroom. We've chopped out lines 10 through 14. Section B is staying the way it is, no changes. Section C remains as is, no changes. Section D, lines 44 through 50 are gone. Line 52 now says, consequences for violations of this policy will be left to school administration. Lines 53 through 59 are gone. Section E remains. Section F remains, and the legal references stay the same.
So, I guess I'm the maker of the friendly amendment, so I'm
Bring in
good.
all the edits?
I'm good with it, but the maker of the motion.
I'm good with it.
Good. Okay. So,
And as a second, I'm good with it.
Okay, so now we vote
Now, is this to pass
with the edits.
with the friendly
With
amendment?
the
On a
edits, yep.
first reading.
On a single read.
On a single read.
Yeah, on a single read. I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
Patty's determined.
With all of that, Genevieve Peckstead Muskie,
No.
Tish Campbell,
Yes.
Nancy Clayberg,
Yes.
Brian French,
Yes.
Byron Maddow,
yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Yes?
Patient.
5-1. Okay,
Okay.
stop share.
Thank
Okay.
you, everyone. That
Wow.
is.
Felt like I was in the policy committee.
Well, I was
there.
going to say, well,
Great.
but I'm going to say that is, I think, is a good example. Now, it's not. We will end up tweaking this.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to happen, right? We're going to engage this on the ground. We're going to end up, in some cases, right now, where we're heading into this territory where we intentionally gave administration wiggle. There will come a time where we might be like, hey, board, we need you to establish less wiggle in order to back us up on certain things. But I would say outside of this particular thing, I think process-wise, it's okay. It's okay to have the conversation here and come to some amendments and not always send it back, because very often there are the conversations that start here and say, I'm not really comfortable with this, let's send it back to the committee. It goes back to the committee and it comes back here, and maybe the person who was like, I wasn't very comfortable, wasn't part of the committee conversation. They're still uncomfortable, didn't change. So let's just get into it, let's have some conversation and some dialogue. And when we have the ability, I would say, just to be clear, when I say about process, I'm not saying we should get in the regular habit of a single read.
No.
I don't think we should do that. But I do think the board should feel comfortable engaging in workshopping policy at the board.
Oh, I thought you were saying just let's do policy here now.
Yeah.
I am not saying that, because we'd all be here a lot longer all the time. I think having the policy committee pre-chew and take a good run at things is super important, and most of the time that's going to do the job. But when we need to make adjustments, I think it's okay to do it here.
Okay. So, the next one is I'm gonna keep the train moving here.
Yes.
JJIC, but before we get into it, I know that I think Lisa had a point of order on it. Lisa?
So my question, Byron, is because we voted unanimously no on this policy on first read, I was looking for a legal opinion on whether it can come back. And it didn't sound from the policy committee meeting notes like we received that.
So in policy, I brought it up and did cursory research and couldn't find anything that said anything to the effect that if you voted down a policy, that you couldn't vote on it again. But I'm not a lawyer. I didn't stay on a Holiday Inn or whatever. And that was just my looking around for that specific thing because so I don't know the answer to that question, but I didn't find anything saying that was the case.
Yeah, I don't know the answer either, but at the city council, if they voted no on first read, that would be the end.
It was defeated.
It wouldn't come back. So I don't know that we have anything specific with the school board, but I would like to know that before we are bringing this back.
I think my understanding is, in terms of just, you can always propose to do anything. So I think about, there can always be a new proposal to consider something. So years ago, I'm sure there are things that other boards voted on where they said no, that you guys had passed 5 years after the fact, that type of thing. So I think it's a matter of can you? I think it's yes, you can, and then it's more about norms. If the council has the norm that once they say no, they don't bring it back for X amount of period of time, then that might be a norm. But I don't think there's a procedural thing that doesn't allow you to reconsider.
Okay.
Do we have a legal opinion on that, though?
Nope, we do not.
Do people feel we should get a legal opinion, or should we move forward and?
Here's my concern with JJIC is that if we don't move forward, our student athletes won't be able to participate in sports, and football practice has already started. Friday, yeah. So I'm not going to be the one to stop that.
Okay.
I'm caught in a loop right now. I'm a little confused. So is that because I remember making this amendment with the club team, but are we saying that we shot it down the first time, so we can't vote on it now? But if we don't have this in place,
So, right, we tried to pass with first reading,
right?
and it was not unanimous because I voted to pass the first reading. Everyone else voted to not pass it.
No, I think I voted to pass it.
Did you? Okay. So it was, but it was voted down, the first reading.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be a new proposal of JJIC
Right.
in this form.
And it states it's a first reading.
Right.
Well, if I remember correctly, we had this read, it was completely rewritten from what the requirements were. So it was defeated because of the modifications. The agreement was then we go back to what the law is, and then you're bringing this back in for additional modifications. So these regulations and guidelines already exist. They do not. You said that we would, from what I remember the last time this was brought up, what the modifications were modifications to what the law stated, and that we were modifying them to be more inclusive to individuals, if I remember that correctly.
No, so, well, my interpretation is slightly different, which is that I think we currently have JJIC.
Yes.
But it is not in compliance with the law. It is our JJIC is to your, I think what you're saying. Our JJIC currently is more inclusive than what the law states, and the changes we brought up at the last meeting were to get more towards what the law states.
I believe the opposition of that. I believe, and how it was presented to me was that they were too restrictive, and they wanted to modify it to make it more inclusive for others. If I'm not, I mean, you're shaking your head yes, so I'm going to say yes.
So what, the we got stuck on a couple of things, which have been crossed out. The club team part, we removed in policy because that was something that was like, well, why is this even
Matter.
included?
Yeah.
And then we also looked at original birth certificates and the paragraphs that go from line 31 to 38-ish, and changing original birth certificate to official, and official is the wording that was in the RSA. The rest of this was more about procedures to make sure that we still had physicals in place, and that the academic pieces were in there. Those were not things that people were questioning. It was more of what is redlined on that first page.
But I just want to, before we get into it, we don't even have a motion.
Nope.
Maybe we should have a motion to approve for first reading.
Motion to approve the first reading of,
JJIC.
JIC.
yeah, thank you.
Second.
Okay. Sorry.
Discussion.
Discussion. So the two changes were, we took out including any school-sponsored club team, and we changed original to official birth certificate.
I got rid of all this.
And then we got rid of 31 to 38. Okay, is there any discussion on that?
What's the definition of official birth certificate versus original? What's the contradiction?
I would take it as something you could go to the city hall and get. Right?
I think there's,
I'm just curious what the purpose of the modification was.
well, I think because some folks do not have access to their original birth certificate, so official would be go back to wherever the origin of records are and get a new one. That would be the official birth certificate, as opposed to the original, which
You get at birth, and who has that?
yeah.
The official birth certificate typically refers to the certified copy. The original is what you got at birth.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to make a comment? Any other discussion? Shall we vote?
Oh, Lisa. Lisa's
Oh,
also-
Lisa?
Thanks. I have one question. On line 75, what would be the reason to include middle school there? Because not all of our middle school teams are NHIAA teams, so I'm just curious about what is that doing that's different from the other part of the policy? Do we need that?
I can't answer that.
Lisa, I missed what you said. Did you say
Yeah,
not
your
all
pieces.
teams are part of NHIAA? Is that what she said?
Middle school, not all middle school teams.
Correct. Yeah, so I guess I'm curious. I mean, we've removed club teams, but then we have this section on 75 that says, it doesn't say it's just interscholastic, it just says all teams. So I'm just curious about, is that then roping in club teams again there inadvertently?
I would think because the title is eligibility for interscholastic athletics, that would apply to interscholastic.
But we already say higher up that we're following NHIAA, so I guess I'm curious, what does that additional line do?
Well, the middle school isn't even.
Right, that's what I
abiding
guess
by-
I'm
Yeah,
asking.
it's like. The high school principals are the ones that sit on the NHIA committee, and middle school has nothing to do with it.
Right, and I don't want to put unnecessary burden on middle school athletics participation by accident with the policy.
Yeah.
Do we need that for some reason I'm not getting, or could we strike that?
I would say if I would be, who's the maker of the motion? I don't even know.
What's that?
Tish?
I am.
Tish. I don't know. Maybe Tish is open to a friendly amendment.
I'm open to anything friendly. It's fine.
Yep.
Did you
I
make the
second-
original?
I second
you
it.
did, okay.
So
Do
I'm
you
good
feel
with
the
it.
same way? Okay. All right, so the friendly amendment is to take out line 75 to 76.
Well, no, it's to get rid of middle.
I don't know, Lisa, do you want to make a pass at what the change might be?
Well, I don't think we need either of those two lines, but if there's a reason that we do, then I would just take out middle.
She's saying it's already referenced in the beginning of lines,
Yeah, I
what,
think so,
12
too.
through 14. It acknowledges it.
Right.
I think
So-
that's her point.
Yeah.
Remove,
So the
So
friendly
what's the
amendment is to
purpose
take
of
out
it being
line 75
repeated?
to 76. Okay.
It may not be necessary.
I don't know if there's detriment to it, but
It's also not in the sample policy.
Of the NHSBA?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it may not be
I wonder
necessary
how it-
anyways.
Yeah, I wonder how it got in there then. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor with a friendly amendment. Any other discussion?
Just a quick question, Brian. I'm sorry, Byron, I thought this was a new policy. I don't recall us having JICC before.
Okay.
Am I just totally brain dead on that?
You're right, Lisa. I misspoke. It is new.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's the reason why we need it,
That's why. Yeah. It is. Yeah.
Yeah. All right,
so they can play.
I think, are we ready to vote? Patty?
okay. Motion to approve JJIC, first reading with the removal of lines 75 and 76. Genevieve Beckstead Muskie,
no.
Tish Campbell,
Yes.
Nancy Clayberg,
Yes.
Brian French,
Yes.
Byron Matto,
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport,
Yes.
5-1. Okay.
Okay, great. Wow, those were three challenging policies, but we
But
made
really
progress.
healthy
We did it.
discussions.
Yes, very good discussions.
Felt very
Thank you.
friendly, a
Thank
lot of
you,
friendly
everyone.
amendments going on.
Yes,
Very friendly.
Okay,
Other than friendly amendment.
we're almost
Amicable
done.
today.
We're up to committee updates. You have policy committee minutes from July 31st, 2025. Future agenda items.
5-minute meeting.
Yes. We have to have a 5-minute meeting between now and
Monday.
5 o'clock Monday to approve the
Amended superintendent's
superintendent's
contract.
contract. To approve the amended superintendent's contract.
It wasn't on this, it
It
wasn't on this agenda.
Okay, that's, yes, Byron.
Nancy, I'd prefer to do it this week,
Okay,
if possible.
I agree. What time is good for a 5-minute meeting? Is 6 PM good, or?
Is it something we can do via Zoom?
Oh, yes, I was planning to do it via Zoom.
Okay.
Can we be totally
We
virtual?
can all be virtual, can't we?
If you are having a vote, you have to have a physical location.
Are you sure?
I think so.
I
yeah.
think so. This is a New Hampshire thing.
So as long as some
I'm
people
trying, I'm just trying to remember whether or not you need a quorum.
You need a physical quorum.
You need a physical quorum.
Present?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Physical quorum of the, and I don't know if it's a physical quorum of the entire board or a physical quorum of the attendees, and whether a virtual. Do you know what I mean? You know what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
So let's say it's nine people. Physical quorum would be 5, but if there are 6 people who participate in the meeting, you see where I'm going, right? And could you end up with 4 and 2 or something?
And we need 24 hours notice, right? Is it 24?
Yes, we have
24
to.
hours.
So can we
have to
do
post it.
Thursday, 7 o'clock?
I could do Thursday.
Thursday, 7 PM. How do people feel about Thursday?
I would have to be virtual, but I could do it.
How many
I could
in-person
be
people? I'm an
present.
in-person person.
I'm in person.
I can be in
Nancy,
person.
Tish, Byron.
Tish. Genevieve, are you looking?
I'll make it work.
Genevieve.
You can make it work.
Volleyball.
Can you be here, though?
That's
Yes.
Can we schedule it in for volleyball?
Oh, my daughter.
Oh, you can
I'm
go.
playing.
oh, Genevieve's
You can
fine.
go to the volleyball game and be in the corner.
Before 5. Okay.
would be
Yep,
allowed.
yep. Okay, we're good.
I'd be.
So we're good, Nancy, for Thursday at 7.
Thursday at 7, but so far we only have 4 people that can be
I
present.
think we have 5. Is 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, Lisa?
Lisa?
I'll still be at Children's, but I can do virtual.
Okay.
We need Carrie or Lee.
Carrie or Lee?
Pep is like,
I think Pip's
The way,
gone
Pip is
away.
away.
away, so we have Lee
Lee's the
and
only one that.
Lee
Carrie.
and Carrie, okay.
Well, it's just 5 people to, you need like at least a quorum
I
of
could-
4.
I could run
So
it.
me
If it's
not
gonna be
being
5
for-
minutes,
means you
I
have
can
enough
drive in for 5
people
minutes.
to vote on it,
Is
then
7
I
o'clock
just
okay?
won't call in.
Okay. All right, so we have Brian for 5, and we just gotta speed run that sucker.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, it should be very easy.
would it,
I mean,
would it, would it be easier to have it a little bit earlier?
I have housing committee right before
Oh,
that. That's
okay.
why the 7 o'clock.
All right,
Yeah.
then no worries.
Okay, 7 PM Thursday. And Zach, you'll tell us, well, we have to issue an
Yeah,
agenda.
Yeah, an actual
So-
agenda.
And it's public, so
Yep.
we will have the contract posted in the agenda, so everybody look at the contract, but we all talked about it, so the public can see it, and then we'll just say, okay, let's vote. But we
In the
do
school
have to
board
have the Pledge
conference
of
room.
Allegiance and the public comment, if anybody
That's the only
shows up.
surface area we own.
no, it's free, so I just booked you in there.
there we
Where are we?
School board conference room, I just booked you in.
Board conference room. Okay, is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Okay,
Great.
reopen public comment, there's no one here. I'll close the public comment.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do we have a second? Oh, we do. Motion to adjourn second. Okay, all in favor?
Do we have to do a
Roll
formal?
call.
We have to do a roll call, right?
You do for the adjournment?
I'm just
No,
kidding.
we're not doing it.
No, we're not doing it.
Happy to adjourn, Lisa?
We're not doing it.